It was just after sunrise when the crunch of tires on gravel yanked me out of that perfect lakeside silence. I'd come up here to the cabin for a quiet weekend, no phone. No deadlines, just me, the loons, and the smell of pine baking under the sun. But when I stepped out onto the porch, coffee in hand, I froze. There she was, HOA Karen herself, though she didn't live anywhere near this property, standing by a gleaming silver SUV that looked like it had just rolled out of a dealership showroom. She had her hands on her hips, surveying my driveway as if she were inspecting her kingdom. And when she turned, she smiled a slow, condescending smile before saying the 7 words that lit the fuse. "I'll be using this cabin for the weekend." I blinked, sure I'd misheard. "I'm sorry, what?" She motioned to the view behind me. "This place is wasted on someone like you. My friends and I need somewhere peaceful for our girls' trip. You're going to do the neighborly thing and let us stay here. I already parked, so let's not make it awkward." If there's one thing I've learned from growing up with an army dad and a lawyer mom, it's that you don't reward arrogance, you document it. I glanced at my phone, thumbed the camera open, and caught her standing there in her full glory, sunglasses perched on her head like a crown. "This cabin belongs to me," I said, voice steady. "Private property. You need to leave." She actually laughed. "Oh, please. I'm friends with the HOA president. We can use any community property if it's for the benefit of residents." "That's cute," I replied. "Except this isn't community property, and I'm not even in your HOA." That's when she dropped the fake smile and leaned in. "You'll regret making this difficult." She walked back to her SUV, slammed the door, and just sat there like she thought she could outweight me. Well, if she wanted to play stubborn, she'd picked the wrong opponent. I walked to the gate at the edge of my Drivia heavy steel frame my dad and I had installed years ago, and swung it shut with a satisfying clang. The padlock clicked, and suddenly she was on the wrong side of it. I could see the realization dawn in her eyes when she realized her shiny SUV was now trapped inside my property, behind my lock, under my rules. Karen rolled her window down. "You can't do that." "I already did," I said, holding up the key. "But you're welcome to leave the SUV here until you feel like apologizing and driving it away." That was the opening move in what became one of the most absurd standoffs I've ever experienced. She called someone on her phone loud enough for me to hear her say words like trespassing and illegal detainment. But when the sheriff's truck pulled up an hour later, the twist hit hard. Deputy Miles stepped out, recognized me instantly, and grinned. "Hey, Sam, how's the fishing?" I handed him my deed, which I kept laminated in the cabin for just such ridiculous situations. He took one look, then turned to Karen. "Ma'am, this is clearly his property. You're parked on it without permission. That's trespassing. He's within his rights to lock the gate." Karen's jaw dropped. "So you're not going to make him let me out?" Miles shrugged. "Not unless he wants to unlock it. I'd suggest leaving before this turns into a ticket." I thought that would be the end of it. Oh, how wrong I was. By lunchtime, Karen's girls' trip had arrived, 3 more SUVs pulling up outside the gate, blocking the public road. They came with coolers, lawn chairs, and the kind of entitled energy you can smell before you see. They set up right outside my fence line, glaring at me as I grilled fresh trout on the deck. I leaned back in my chair, plate in hand, and gave them a little wave. "Welcome to my view," I called. "Enjoy it from there." The next day, things escalated. I woke to the sound of someone rattling the gate. Peeking out, I caught Karen's friend with a bolt cutter, trying to snap the padlock. That's when the second twist of the weekend landed. Me neighbor across the lake, old Mr. Howard, came motoring over in his fishing boat. Turns out he used to be a county judge, and he still had plenty of pull with law enforcement. Within an hour, 2 more sheriff's trucks rolled in, and the girls' trip scattered like geese, leaving Karen alone with her trapped SUV. By then, I'd made a decision. I wasn't unlocking that gate until I'd had the best 3 days of lakeside living this cabin had ever seen. Every morning, I brewed coffee on the porch while Karen sat in her SUV fuming. Every afternoon, I paddled out in the kayak, waving to passing boats while she sat in the heat. And every evening, I built a campfire, roasted marshmallows, and let the smell drift toward her just to remind her what she was missing. By day 3, she cracked. The knock at my porch railing was weak, her voice hoarse. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have assumed I could take your cabin. Can I please leave?" I studied her for a long moment, then walked to the gate. The padlock clicked open, the hinges groaned, and I stepped aside. "You could have just asked, Karen. But you had to make it a game." She didn't answer, just climbed into her SUV and drove away without looking back. What she didn't know then was that the whole thing had been caught on my security cameras. And that video? Well, let's just say the internet had a field day with Lakeside Karen. By the time I drove back to town that week, my phone had blown up. Luke from the hardware store had sent me a link with the caption, "You're famous now." The security footage from my cabin gate Karen's smug arrival, the locking of the gate, the bolt cutter incident, and her sheepish apology had been clipped, edited, and posted to a local Facebook group. From there, it spread like wildfire. People couldn't get enough of the Lakeside Karen saga. Memes popped up overnight. One of her glaring over the gate with the text, "Access denied." Another of me sipping coffee with King of the Cabin underneath. At first, I figured it would blow over. But then a reporter from the county paper called. She dug into Karen's background, and the real story started to leak. Karen wasn't just some nosy neighbor. She'd been running a fake HOA events committee in another neighborhood, shaking down residents for maintenance fees that went straight into her personal account. Several people recognized her from the video and came forward with receipts, emails, and threatening letters she'd sent over the past 2 years. 2 days later, Sheriff Grant, same guy who'd laughed in her face at the gate, called me personally. "Sam, you might want to swing by the courthouse next week. She's got a hearing for fraud, trespassing, and attempted destruction of private property." DA's real interested in that bolt cutter incident. I didn't plan on attending, but curiosity won. The courtroom was packed. Residents from her old HOA sat shoulder to shoulder with locals who just wanted to see justice served. Karen shuffled in, not in her usual summer hat and designer sandals, but in a plain beige suit that somehow made her look smaller. Her lawyer tried to argue that she'd been under the impression the cabin was community property and that locking the gate was malicious. The judge wasn't buying it. He played the security footage right there on the court's big monitor, pausing at the moment Karen's friend tried to cut the lock. "That," the judge said, "is not an impression. That's intent." When the verdict came, it was a clean sweep. Guilty on all charges. She got 6 months in county jail, a $7,500 fine, and an order to pay restitution to every resident she'd scammed through her fake committee. She was also permanently barred from holding any leadership position in any homeowners association or neighborhood council in the state. I thought that would be the end of it, but the internet wasn't done with her. The clip kept circulating, and soon national news outlets picked it up under headlines like, "Weekend Cabin Standoff Ends in Arrest," and "Entitled Woman Learns a Gate is Mightier Than a SUV." A boating magazine even asked to use a still shot of me in the kayak as part of an article about lake property boundaries. As for me, I leaned into the King of the Cabin nickname. The next time I went up there, I had a friend carve a wooden sign to hang on the gate, big block letters, hand-painted, "My cabin, my rules." And I made a habit of keeping the gate locked every time I arrived, not out of fear, but as a reminder of that weekend when arrogance tried to take over my peace and got locked out instead. The best part? The community seemed lighter after Karen's downfall. Neighbors actually started talking, helping each other with real projects instead of nitpicking and inventing rules. A few people even stopped by the cabin on their kayaks just to say hi, bringing fresh pies or a couple of beers. I learned something that weekend. Sometimes the strongest stand you can take isn't about shouting or fighting, it's about holding your ground, literally, and letting the other side wear themselves out. So what do you think? Was I right to lock the gate and ride it out, or should I have ended the standoff sooner?